as well, by the way. So we're doing it. And we are live on Oz Property Investors. We bring the big names and we have the big late fun. I was going to say late fun. Call it out. How you going, Jane? And how you going, Jen? It's a big session.
Great.
Hey, Jen.
Can't wait.
Hey, Jane.
Hey, Jen.
I asked you both at the same time, which is a little, I must admit, it's probably a little bit awkward. I need to ask you individually, but that's okay. Because I was just so excited because we've not ever had two guests on the show. Usually there's no Joe this week. We've let him, I'm saying, put him out to the pasture, man. That's not what I should be saying about Joe. We are going to be talking tonight about revealing the biggest property investment fraud or biggest property fraud out there. So stay tuned. We will unpack that, and it's not any of us on the call. It's potentially maybe all of us, but maybe I'm letting the cat out of the bag. Then we're going to talk to, well, what are those challenges that people are facing, which I think is very important to unpack, and what's the hidden message behind those things and the thing holding people back. And then also we're going to sort of do some scenarios. I think that's really will be powerful for people. And last off, we have a really innovative tool that Jane's bringing to us tonight. So stay tuned for that right till the end, because if you're not sort of watching that, so jump on. So it's going to be a big session. But first, I need to introduce these two lovely women in front of me joining the session. So those of you who've not seen Jane before, I don't know where you've been, but you're 18 years as an engineer in mining, and I suppose that's led you to focus on risk and strategy, sort of property investing as well, or led you to that path. And now you've got also 18 years of investing experience. So I think there's some crossover there. 100% has to be some crossover.
I hope so. Yes.
And you started a broking business and in order to help people build their wealth. But through that, I suppose as well, you've raised a lot of money for charity. The Kids Helpline is a big passion, and good on you for doing that. But I suppose throughout that, you started to realize that there was more beyond that. And that's part of the formation of the session. And Jenny, as well, not to be, you didn't buy your first property until 34. So that's amazing that you've been able to then you went on to 4 properties and worth over $2 million probably now. And you had a baby within 15 months. So that's amazing. And then you sort of managed to, unfortunately, have a relationship split up, which then led you keeping 2 properties, and you're now sort of in the process of developing while having working full time in also sort of train, but also parenting full time. So is there any? I don't know where you find time to scratch yourself, but both very busy, super accomplished women.
It sounds worse than what it is.
No,
I know. I'm exhausted just listening to it, Jeff. And I thought you had a busy life.
I do. But so first off, I want to get straight into this because there's so much value we can bring to this conversation. I want to know, and we'll give Jenny first. I want to hear her sort of story as to what's got you into. Why do you invest? What is the reason you invest in property?
Well, retiring on whatever super, working till I'm 65. I mean, it just doesn't feel like a good life. It doesn't feel like, and it's just not one I want to live. So it took me a while to get started, but once you do start, it's much easier. Starting, it's a hard part.
No, I think that's I think for me that's why a lot of us or the surface reason why people say they invest. And over to you, Jane. Like, what started you on the investing journey? What is it that got you into it and kept you going, I suppose?
I definitely was anti-property investing. And I was just like, if you buy a property, you got to pay it off. It keeps you really, fixed. I thought it was the white picket fence. You had to have a home, and then you bought an investment property. I didn't want to have a home. My boss kept saying to me, look, please buy a home because then I know I've got you for life. And so it was like this life sentence, which is what mortgage comes from, the word mort, right? Which is death. So it's like this life sentence. So I was like, I'm footloose, I'm foot fancy free, I'm 28. And then I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and I was, sitting under a tree in New Zealand on holiday. And he said, do you work for your money or does your money work for you? And I was like, I've got this under control. I get a great paycheck as an explosives engineer in the mining industry, more than 3 times what everyone else is earning. And I've got it under control. And then I realized that I actually was spending what I was earning. And so I didn't have it under control. And then I met my now husband, Todd. So this is like 25 years ago. And he had bought an investment property. He was like, really entrepreneurial. And he's like, yeah, there's something in this investment property. As soon as I pay off my first property, I'll go and buy another one. And we went to a Henry Kay talk back in like 2000. And, I'd been going to all of, from then on, we were going to like all of the 2-hour free talks. And, I got to about, number 30 of them, and I realized they're all the same. And so I used to take a notebook and I'd write down anything interesting that I'd learned about property stuff, but then I'd start writing down how they were presenting, what kind of, techniques they were using to get the crowd in. And I actually then kind of learned a lot about the sleazier side of the property investing, bought 120 property books as a good engineer, did the research, and I got to the point where I was like, okay, if this is research-based, and as an explosives engineer, I understand risk assessment. I did a thesis on the first thesis on risk assessment in the mining industry. I understand consequence. I understand likelihood. I understand risk. How can I de-risk that? And so there were 16,655 suburbs in Australia. I worked out which ones over the last 10 to 20 years had outperformed the others and went, okay, success leaves clues. I can actually de-risk this. And then I got really scared and I was like, what if I really stuff it up and get into the wrong area? So I created the Trident strategy, which had 3 ways to make money, which was buying well under market by understanding it and adding value through renovation, and then the third one in the growth. So I had 3 ways in case I stuffed up one. So that was it.
Wow. You've very succinctly given us basically about sort of 20 years. So I'm impressed at how, but I'll pull back the layer, pull back an onion a little bit there to sort of understand why is it you do? What drove you to do that?
Pardon me, sorry, I missed that question.
So what was the reason you sort of decided and kept it? Because that just sounds quite challenging to keep going because investing as with life gets tough. So what is the reason? Is there a bigger why behind why you sort of managed to build that?
Absolutely. At that time, I mean, my parents had always, my dad's a farm labourer, on 24 grand a year. My mum was a nurse and had got injured nursing and lost the case. So, they had no money, they had no retirement, and I knew I was going to have to look after them. So, and I knew, they had sacrificed everything to send me to a great school. And, I got the opportunity to, I remember we're sitting in the lounge room writing scholarship letters because I needed to have a scholarship to get to uni because we couldn't afford to go to uni. And I finally got one. It was mining engineering. I'm like, I just need to get to uni to learn how to learn. I don't really care what the subject is. And so I went and became a mining engineer, 4 years at uni. And then, I was paying for my sister to get through school because I was on a scholarship, so I had lots of money. And so it was all about creating a retirement for my parents and giving them something and giving them back for what they'd given me. So that was my first why. When Todd and I, between 2001 and 2006, the last property I bought was in 2006. So we kind of worked out what we needed to have the lifestyle that we wanted, and that was enough. And we bought 7 investment properties. We're all good. Had worked out how to add, the first one I had $45,000, $25,000 went to stamp duty, $25,000 was a 5% deposit. There was a $425,000 purchase in Melbourne, in Carlton. I borrowed $50,000 off someone as a private loan, did a renovation, and it had been revalued at $700,000 9 months later. Took the equity out, went and bought in Sydney, did the same, and never put any more than that first $45,000 in for the purchase of the property. But it was the elevation of the renovation. I was like, Jesus, I've cracked the code. So I showed my friends and family, which subsequently some have been through divorces, some have had horrible health issues, and those properties has actually helped them. And then I thought, crikey, if 50% of all relationships end in divorce, and the number one reason is financial strain, if I can actually solve this for Australians and keep more people at the table, inspiring their children, being role models, and showing giving a way that they can actually have some type of stability that then allows them to be the best version of themselves, that's intergenerational change. So I thought, how can I do this? I'll become a financial planner. And then I found out financial planners could not help on property. So I thought, bugger it, I'll become a mortgage broker. And I had friends going, oh my God, you've sold yourself to the devil, you've gone to the dark side. And so in 2005, April Fool's Day, 20 years next year, Investors Choice Mortgages started. And then, you know, I was not around the loans or the interest rates. I was like, full on, tell me your long-term vision. I want to be with you on this journey. And if I can help navigate because of my property experience, I will. And so, you know, I won Australia's Mortgage Broker of the Year twice. And then I thought, I can do more. I need to be able to put all this education online. So then in 2011, I started Your Property Success and, you know, sold thousands of courses, The Ultimate Guide to Renovation, etc. And, you know, I went to the States to learn how to authentically sell from, you know, a course because everyone else was like doing these steak knives kind of stuff. And so my biggest thing was, how can I actually create financial security and abundance so that people could then get on and live their best lives? And then it got to a stage in 2017, 2018, some of the people were buying these like $1,000, $3,000 courses. And I was trying to force them to do it all. I didn't want people to buy the course and then not do them. And so I was like, I'm only going to give you a module a week, you know, and I was quite, you know, supportive because I wanted to do it. But people are still stuffing up. They'd do all this research and they'd go and buy a unit or an off the plan something. I'm like, no. And so I thought, how can I help more? So I just started mentoring people. So I'd mentor 10 people a year and they pay me a shitload of money for it. But I made sure that they would if I couldn't see they could do 10x of that investment, which was like 20 grand, I think it's a shitload of money. Then if I couldn't create $200,000 worth of benefit to them, I wouldn't take them as clients. And so, you know, I got them from the 16,565 suburbs down to 3 suburbs in the area, in the state that they're interested in, city. And I then did the analysis of this using census to see what streets, you know, the renters were in. I did risk, and set up alerts for when that typical, whatever it was for that suburb, 3-bedroom, 600 square meter weatherboard came on the market. They get an alert. I do a deal review against all the market, etc., you know, and come up with a purchase strategy, and then they could purchase it or get a buyer's agent or someone to help them do it. And this came up for this one lady because I thought if I can course correct people, I can find out where they're going to get in trouble. And so this one lady, this perfect property came up. I did a deal review, and I'm like, we're on. And she's like, oh, it doesn't feel right. I'm like, like, this is it. She's like, no, it doesn't really feel right. And I was like, okay, what else doesn't feel right? And she said, oh, I've just been offered the dream job I always wanted, but it didn't feel right. And I said to her, interesting. Is what are you we're working towards financial success for you, but what's success look like? So, you know, the house by the beach and the fancy car and I'm like, no, that sounds like surface level. Tell me, like, just close your eyes. We did a little visualization. You're successful 30 years from now. Tell me what that looks like. And she said, an old lady dying alone in a mansion. I'm like, no wonder your subconscious does not want you to have success. So we just I was like, look, I don't have the tools to help you navigate those conditions and beliefs, but let me find some. So I found a course, and in 2020, I made all of my mentoring clients come on that course, Create Your Destiny course with William Whitecloud. And I could see these incredible changes in these people. I could see how I could get down to their beliefs and help them bust them, or the conditions and help crush them. And there's limitations. You know, I have to have a university degree and then have the job and then have the wife or husband, then have the house and then have this and this for 40 years, working 40 hours a week to retire on 40%. And then I can be happy because I can do what I really want to do. I'm like, hey, no, let's bust that. And so essentially I took all of my property courses off the market. And now, you know, they're all sitting in Property Chat. People can access all the material for free. And I said, I want to help people actually work out what's limiting them and what the conditions are. I want to help them build their businesses or their investment portfolios, whatever it is. But I want to understand how I can leap jump all of the conditions that people have. And that's my why. I still want people to have that life of abundance, to live to their true purpose and what they want. And if the condition is they feel they need property, then let's work that out. But if the condition is, geez, I thought I needed property, when in actual fact I can do this another way, which is kind of leads us to a borrowing capacity kind of limit thing. It's a limit we put on ourselves. So that's what drives me, is just working out how I can help people have those fully expressed lives and help them see the conditions or the limitations.
It's really it's really powerful what you sort of, and I can see the glint in your eye when you talk about it, and the passion, which for me, the moment I stop feeling passionate about getting people to those goals and sort of unpacking, untangling their, and that's what we're here to talk about. We are here to talk about who the biggest property investment fraud is. Before we kind of get to that, I want people to let us know what things they're challenging, what are their challenges with their own property investment journey, because if we can sort of guide this conversation towards helping what the majority, drop it in the comments, all that sort of stuff, and we'll tackle as many of those. But Jen, before we do that, what I want to know is what sort of things have you struggled with on your property investing journey today? Sorry, Jen.
So I think the separation was a big one. Properties were highly leveraged. We bought they were 1.92 mil was the value, but we bought 4 of them and had my first child all within 15 months. Like, there's a lot of stuff going on in that short time. 3 of them were at 90, 2 were at 98, 1 was at 96, and another one was at 80% LVR. So very high LVR. And then when my daughter was 18 months old, her dad just kind of woke up one day and said, I don't want to be a part of this anymore. So it was kind of like I'm adjusting to motherhood. I'm adjusting to going back to work, full-time shift work, 12.5-hour shifts, I'd only not long, well, a little while, but, breastfeeding and stuff. Like, this kid was attached to me for the first 12 months. So you've got that kind of emotional strain as well. And then COVID hit. The month after he left, COVID hit. We went into lockdown. So everyone was in turmoil and just separate, shared parenting, whilst also trying to keep that, like, there's so much emotion in that. But then at the same time, though, I've got to separate all these assets. Neither one of us has got much cash. How are we going to do this? I mean, the LVRs were so low or so high. So how do you do it? How? And I didn't once think of bowing out. I remember at one stage trying to figure out how to get $100,000. I needed $100,000 cash just to buy him out and keep all 4. He said to me, it's your empire. You can have it if you can afford it. And I had so many conversations, how do I get $100,000? And now it seems like a splash in the ocean. But at the time, and with a lot of that mental strain, a lot of the emotional turmoil, it's not easy to make really smart decisions. And it's not easy to trust yourself when you've had your life kind of the rug pulled out from under you. You lose a lot of trust in your ability to judge situations and make smart choices and decisions. So probably one of the worst, but don't worry, there's many more. That's just one of many.
No, I mean, that's really, thanks for being vulnerable with sharing that, because I mean, that's when some of the typical ones that I sort of hear, it's borrowing capacity, it's not knowing where to buy, it's not enough time, not enough knowledge. But there's just so many different unique reasons, and that really gets to the reason why we've sort of called this the biggest property fraud is actually kind of our mindset in ourselves and getting in our own way, which we've sort of unmasked the person. It's a bit too early, but I don't mind. Like, let's open up that conversation, because so Jane, we've sort of heard that Jen's just struggled with, that's a significant life change and just a lot being thrown at you and just being tested. But what do you see that most people are struggling with typically in their investing journeys? Is it those borrowing capacity, or is it more nuanced reasons? And
yeah, look, it's very easy to give a flippant reply that says, yeah, it's borrowing capacity. It's, I don't have the time to do the research. I don't earn enough. Everyone else got lucky because they invested years ago. There's new taxes here. There's, everyone else had a first home buyer's grant. I can't get it. Like, you can look at those external factors, and I mean, let's face it, some of them are absolutely legitimate. The banks are going to look at you and they're going to say, what do you earn? What do you owe? What can you do, right? And they're going to, I mean, as a mortgage broker, I had a client who slept on his couch and rented his bed out on Airbnb to get his first deposit. And I met up recently with another client. I wrote his first mortgage in 2007, and he was living in a garden shed in Darwin, and to save money. And I had to go and argue to the bank why we didn't have to put down a typical rent into the rental borrowing capacity. And, I found a lender that was going to take it, and he got the first money and he bought the first property investment. And, he reached out to me last week. He's doing well. He's got this incredible job. He's no longer living in a shed. He's got a portfolio, and we're talking about his next property. And so, I think, what the beautiful story that Jen shared is, pain is inherent in life. So just write this down, everyone. Pain is inherent. We are having a human existence here where there's a COVID, where there's separations, where there's job losses, where there's economic downturn, where we can't get a deposit. But suffering is optional. So it's how you deal with that. And, Jen's taken this moment of the shit show that she had to go through and gone, no, not for me. I'm going to step up here. I'm going to find a way. It's only $100,000. How can I pick the portfolio? And sometimes I think
thought of robbing a bank, but I also thought the time wouldn't be worth it.
Yeah, well, they don't take that too well. Actually, I mean, robbing the bank was one of the suggestions in the chat when we did post about how can you improve your borrowing capacity, along with some other interesting answers. But I see people struggle, but I also see, I appreciate the hustle that some do. And as a mortgage broker and property investing coach and educator, etc., there is a hustle that is legal, and there's a hustle that's fraudulent, like some of the other things that people said. Find a broker who will, forge your income statements, or, don't declare a child on your lifestyle. But the reality is that my first investment property, we thought we were pretty clever. We bought two properties side by side. One was my husband's, one was mine, because I didn't want a man to be my financial plan. I wanted to do it all individually. I was, 31, and I was, going to crack it myself. And so we thought they'd pull out one bathroom and one kitchen and do one house, and then they'd do the other. First rainy week 2, they put out both kitchens. So for 6 months, I was going to work covered in plaster dust. We only had a microwave and a kettle. We didn't have any money to walk 2 streets down to Lygon Street and have a nice dinner. Like, if we were going to do something special, it'd be like the lamb's kebab. Like that was a night out, because every cent was going into this thing. And so, we slept on the floor sometimes, and the painter said, we've just painted the room. The fumes are so bad, you can't sleep there. Go to a hotel. I'm like, don't have the cash for the hotel. So it's, you're thinking laterally. If you can't, I couldn't afford this beautiful bath that I wanted. And I'm like, okay, we're pulling out a kitchen. Do you think someone would buy that? And I put it on Gumtree for $600, and someone bought it, and I got my bath. So you kind of, when you step outside the box of the typical thinking, and that's, I mean, I've got a podcast called Exit the Matrix. It's about stepping outside the box, that, and looking at the sliding doors where people can actually go, okay, so, I've been dealt this. How am I going to respond?
Yeah, there's a comment that's come up, and I think it's important. And what I'm sort of hearing is that in order to achieve success, and maybe this is one of my things, I just think it should come easier, and I don't need to work as hard. I mean, I don't know if it's not coming easy, then I don't know. But it's just interesting is what I'm hearing from both of your sort of stories in Jen and your sort of really difficult sort of relationship struggles, and Jane in your sort of when you're renovating and doing all that sort of stuff, going without or sort of. And this person's comment, Tim's jumped in and said, some of the S shows we have to go through in our lives actually makes us stronger and more determined to succeed. Would you say that those?
Can I answer that? Was that Tim? Do you mind, Jen, if I pop in here?
Tim Lowry, yeah, go on.
No, just having a verbal diarrhea moment. But Tim is so right. And I actually did some studying into this, because I'm trying to hack the human condition, right? I'm trying to hack success. And so I went down the path of resilience and understanding. I don't know if anyone's seen The Crown, but Prince Charles and the Duke of Edinburgh went to a school called Gordonston in Scotland. very sparse, very difficult. And the principle of Gordonstone was actually called on by the US government in the Second World War. And they said, we've got this situation where we've got the U-boats are sinking our boats with our men on them. And we found this incredible phenomenon. While they're in the water, it's the young, virile, strong boys that are drowning and dying. And it is the older men who are actually surviving. Like, what is going on? Now, this principle actually then started outward bound based on all that he found. And what he found was that people who have been through situations that has kind of, and I call this the resilience resume. You're putting into your curriculum vitae like these stories where you've actually overcome adversity, or maybe you haven't, but you've faced it and you've got to the other side, maybe not the way you wanted it, but you're building this up. And I challenged myself and did the Overland Tasmanian track recently, this 5-day trek. Don't even let me go there. But there was people on the trek with me, and this guy said, and I was talking about this, and he said he's a scientist and he winters in Antarctica. And he said, one day there was a scientist and this Maori man who went out, and they got lost. They were in a blizzard, and this huge, great big Maori man who was younger actually got to the point of nearly dying when they found him, where this like wily little old scientist was okay. But he'd been through many situations in jungles and all these different places. And so I think, we have to look at the challenges and these scars as actually badges of honor and say, hey, look, I'm still here. I mean, I'm the mother of a 16-year-old, and I'm like, he's still alive. Did it. I've got to have some degree of gratitude. Like every now and then I'm like, rugby.
When my daughter was born, I started measuring a successful day in that nobody died. It's like, no one died today. Yes. It was like, yes.
No one's going to jail.
Success. Yeah. So that's, I guess, and that, like you're saying, it's kind of relevant sometimes too. So I think that's important to note. And it's funny because Jeff and I were talking about resilience earlier, yesterday or something, I can't remember. But I've been doing a lot of research the last few years to see if resilience was a learned skill. So it's obvious that going through the steps, like you're saying, people that have been through, harder times, naturally build resilience. But do we have to do that? And I thought that we did, but I've done a fair bit of research, and there are some tools, and Jane will have other things, I have no doubt. We haven't compared notes, but there are a lot of tools that people can learn and experiment with and understand. But I think the reason why I personally have learned the skills is because I've been through life's experiences. I've had to go and learn the tools. I've had to learn them to survive hard situations. And so if I can help people avoid getting to where I am with the tools that I have without going through the stuff, how good would that be? So I think that's where, I sort of, why I'm here now, and why I like to share things and hopefully people can pick it up. You don't have to be in that like dire straits to be learning how to cope. If you have the tools in your toolbox, you also have the confidence to take on things because you trust yourself, that you've got the right, whether it be people, whether it be like processes, thoughts, tools, whatever it may be, it gives confidence to actually put yourself into what might be a difficult situation. Now, we don't always go into them thinking, I'm going to intentionally take on this hard thing. But a lot of the times that's what's holding us back. People don't not do things hard. Like people don't not take the leap because they think it's going to be easy and they think it's going to work. The reason they struggle to take that leap is because it's going to be hard and it's, it might not be the best outcome.
The thing I love, and we are going to sort of unpack a bit of a framework and some questions and a bit of an exercise, which I think is going to be really exciting to see it in live and in action. The thing I sort of love to do is, if I can, what you're saying there, Jen, is if there's a book or if there's a podcast, I can learn those lessons. Like, I remember sort of Stevie Knight going to West Wendouree and going around the town and sort of learning, going to those properties and sort of knocking on the doors and sort of then eventually figuring out the property that you wanted to buy. But we've all struggled with. So if I learn from another investor, then it's great that I don't necessarily have to go through it. I can learn through somebody else's lived experience, but have you learned it? But I want to tackle this one because this has come up a couple of times now. Bad tenants pretending to be good. How should we approach a challenge such as that, Jane? Like, it's a bit of a test.
I've got such a good
we all do.
I had a
tell us. But how do we overcome it?
Well, I'm just going to tell you a story of a bad tenant, first of all, that I thought was good. So I had a new application for a terrace house that I've got in Darlington in Sydney, next to Newtown, about a month ago, 6 weeks ago, and I have an incredible agent at McGrath's, Alex and McGrath's at Edgecliff, and I've had her for like 10 years. And having so many properties, I've had a lot of agents. And there was these two girls, you know, they both have their own homes, Western Sydney. They decided to rent out their homes. Mortgage prices were so high, do a bit of a hustle and rent together. I'm like, yeah, I appreciate the hustle. This is a great strategy. And then my agent rang me and said, oh, thank you, darling. Cup of tea time. And then I got a Tim Tam too.
Can your hubby come over here and make me a cup of tea and a bicky? That'd be amazing.
I got one waiting this night.
Anyhow, and so they complained about ants, and they sent a video to say we got ants in the kitchen. And so she's looking at this picture of the ants in the kitchen of the video, and she's come back to me and she said, the house looked too staged. And so I jumped on Airbnb, and they've listed my house on Airbnb and they're subletting it. And they had to list it twice because they got complaints about the steep stairs and people's dogs falling down them. I'm like, oh my God, indemnity insurance. Anyhow, they were doing a real hustle, and I appreciate the hustle, right? And I could see they had 2 or 3 other properties in the area. So I appreciate the hustle, but just not in my property. So I thought it was a good tenant. And so I basically sat in on the weekend going, I appreciate the hustle. And Todd and I had a conversation about it. And I rang the insurance company, and I said, what's my exposure? And they said, we're covering you for nothing. No property indemnity, no personal indemnity insurance, no, property, if they burn the property
Probably
down.
Not even the building. Yeah.
Nothing. Nothing's covered. Landlord's insurance, damage, nothing's covered. And so I was like, oh, goodness. So I went back and said, no, kick him out. She said, well, let's be strategic about this. We can kick him out, and then, you're up to the cost of getting someone new. Or we can say it's a breach of lease. And they're probably listening because they're so clever they'd be in this group, but they're breach of lease. So they actually have to decide if they're going to break. And if they break, they have to pay the break fees and da-da-da-da. And so we offered a breach. So, yeah. There are bad tenants. There are, pain is inherent. Shit does happen. You can get bad tenants. That's why you have landlord's insurance. That's why you minimize the risk. That's why you have 6 monthly inspections. So there's ways you minimize that risk. And, I remember back in 2001, hearing someone talk about having a group of bikies change oil in their lounge room. And I was horrified. And I've got I probably have 20 different insurance policies across businesses and properties, etc. And I'm so overinsured. But the fact of the matter is that I was always like, how can I sleep at night? What do I have to do to know that I'm okay? And so some of my insurance policies are things like having a 30-year line of credit. So it would never go to a P&I. I was happy to pay an extra 1% for that.
Is that still? I know we're talking about mindset, but is that still a product out of interest?
Well, it was 20 years ago when I got it. I've got 10 years left.
I've still got 10 years left.
I'm okay.
I was
just going to say, and that in itself is an opportunity. So when something good comes up, and you can always, I'm assuming you can always refinance and get rid of it, or you can always close it, or whatever that line of credit is, right? But
Just like a credit card, you
you
pay
know,
it down,
yeah.
take it out again.
But making the best of what's available in the moment or in the time is a part of that as well. Because if you're not taking advantage of the opportunities that are available, like your 30-year thing, they're not going to be around. They might not be around in 10 years' time. And that's why everyone now will, like Jeff's like, is that even a thing? Of course it's not a thing anymore. So it's important to take advantage of those opportunities.
Depends on how much you're willing to pay.
Yeah. There's always a provider. It's just what the cost is, I suppose. So we are going to, I want to get through not get through. I want to talk to a scenario, because that's where we learn probably most, through seeing lived and actual experience. And one of those examples is going to be borrowing capacity. It's going to be me being a little bit vulnerable and talking to what are my challenges in my own investing journey. So I'm going to talk to that. But first, we want to get Jen. I want to hear what are some of your, or what is the challenge you've prepared to us, that Jane's got a framework of questions to ask and unpack and unstuck that property investor fraud inside of all of us. So what's your challenge first off, Jen?
Well, like everyday life. However, let's pick one.
I often have trouble guessing myself in the morning, but yeah.
Don't worry, I say I'm the worst adult. I can do really hard things, but I'm not much chop at adulting, which is like getting out of bed, doing normal things. But just before we start, I just thought it sprung to mind too. I just want to throw it out there. I think it was a parenting coach a couple of years ago that I had said this one to me. So life's hard, but we get to choose our hard. So just basically similar to what Jane was saying before. Is it? I don't even know. I just remember the parenting coach saying to us, and, with relevance to parenting, which may not be relevant, but hell, if you can release stress over one part of your life, you find you've got more emotional capacity to deal with property stuff and things like that. And it was basically about putting the effort, like front loading, which is, again, a Goggins thing, right? So it was about front loading. So putting the energy and effort into setting things up, taking her to the park after school, reconnecting after being at her dad's. Like, if I put that effort in, going out in nature with her so that we're both grounded, we can run out of energy. So and if that saves 2 hours, 2.5 hours of meltdowns at bedtime, you choose your hard. So it's just a slogan that I say in my head when something's hard. It's we always have choice. And, it's going to be hard either way. Like, I know that sounds negative, but
it's interesting that Jen says that, Jeff, because I, as an engineer and a logical thinker, and I can see from the comments that I'm answering here, there's a lot of engineers out there, but we're kind of trained black and white, right? We're trained in the logic. We need to see the proof. We need to know the how. And so when I went down this path of the Create Your Destiny course, I was thrown into the personal development realm, bigger than the kind of Tony Robbins that we've all done, or Stephen Covey that we did at work. And it really challenged me to consider, how could we create what we wanted without limitations, understanding and realizing and neutralizing these negative things or talk or whatever in our head, and the challenges that we have. And it kind of was like woo-woo, which I see the woo now and I'm like, woo, it's kind of window of opportunity. And what was wow now, like the neuroscience that we're seeing in AI, like I've just flown in from Perth last night where I taught 100 mortgage brokers how to use AI in their business. Like, there's all these tools that we have now, and there's all this, wow that we have now. That was woo a while ago. The science around, just medicine 200 years ago was all woo-woo. And so I kind of looked at that and I thought, well, what's the neuroscience of this? What's the neurobiology? So I spent a week with a neuroscientist, and I'm deep in learning about that. So how's the brain take this information? And what I found extraordinary is that when we're in a state of stress, exactly what Jen said, we get to choose how we're going to react. And when we're in stress, we get something that has tipped off our amygdala, and then we have 3 seconds before it goes to our prefrontal cortex where reasoning happens. Now, where a state of stress, it doesn't go there. What it does is it essentially goes to a box of stories that we have from the past, maybe not the stories that we want to repeat, but the familiar stories, and our energy efficient brain jumps in there and goes, quick, where's the story in this index that I've got in my past that I can now know what action I'm going to take? So, people who are always dating the wrong people or losing money or buying the wrong property or, getting looked over at jobs at work, how you do anything is how you do everything. There's an underlying belief there that we're going to take Jeff through an exercise and expose. But exactly what Jen said is that the neuroscience is now caught up to the personal development work of the Sufis and Socrates and everyone who basically said your thoughts and feelings are not real. So what you think,
they're everything.
You go into this little box. So in actual fact, we take in 400 billion pieces of information a second, but we have the capacity to actually process 2,000. And how do we quickly get to the 2,000? What's been our experience in the past? So we're stuck in the past always. We're just repeating stuff. And it's not until you're not stressed that you can actually look at being creative, connecting the dots that other people do. And I know what stress is like. I had doing a renovation. So I've done multiple renovations and helped thousands of people with their renovations and buy property, even though I had stopped buying myself in 2006. And I remember we're in the middle of renovating this property in the house in eastern suburbs, and this plumber came and said, the toilet out the back in the laundry goes to ground. There was no sewage connected. I'm like, what? Oh my God, what are we going to do? We're going to have to rip up the path. We're going to have to put in the sewage. I dealt with the situation with, what do? I'm going to deal with how to deal with this. If I'd stepped back and hadn't been stressed, I'm like, do I need a second toilet? And I wasn't in that state. I was in the stress reaction state. How do I fix this $8,000 later? So, what Jen says is so important is our we get to choose. And our thoughts and feelings, when they come up, they're actually an indicator that we are in one of the old stories or the repeats of maybe what we don't want.
Yeah. That's it's really it's interesting how these examples absolutely do apply to property investing, because if you're stressed about am I going to get that loan across the line, or you start to sort of second guess yourself and you're making decisions based on it's not going to happen, you sort of get afraid and you just pull and you sort of freeze up. Some people, I mean, not saying everybody does, but so Jen, before we do have the exercise for myself, but do you want to talk to your or you just want to throw to me, because we are 43 minutes in.
I know you guys go. I've got some tools and bits and pieces I'm happy to share, but we'll just go with you guys. Do your little skit.
Fantastic. I want to hear your tools. We will hear those, because I know you've got absolute gold in that treasure chest.
I've got my notebook ready.
Okay, so Jane, run me through. Yes. So set the scene for how somebody can do this themselves as well. I'm open.
Look, this is difficult to do yourself, but the first 2 steps, 3 steps, you can definitely do yourself. And I'm sometimes I'm in I've got a teenage son. I'm in this 3 or 4 times a day, right? Going, where the stress comes up. And it's interesting you speak about David Goggins, because one of the things that he talked about was that when the Navy SEALs were actually put into a situation where they'd been dropped into behind enemy lines and they had to deal with the situation, the very first thing they did was they created a perimeter so that they can focus on everything inside that perimeter and gives you focus. So really what we do is we set the intention that we're going to dig out what's the underlying belief for you, Jeff, that is holding you back in some of the things that you want to create in your life. And we use an example of where you've got a conflict at the moment, or a conflict with another person, something that's recent and relevant, but a conflict or a situation that is really not sitting right for you and is, taking up a bit of mental space. So we choose that. We set a perimeter and an intention that said we're going to dig out your underlying belief, and we're just going to concentrate on you. So you don't have to worry about the comments. You don't have to worry about we're going over time, I look like a dickhead, whatever. You just have to set that circle, step into that, and we're just going to concentrate on that. So can I have your commitment on that?
I'm in. Circle.
Brilliant.
Circle, Jeff.
Okay,
Done.
we're up. Okay, so Jeff, I want you to think about something that you've got in your life at the moment. It's a conflict or an issue or a problem, and tell us.
So I'm hoping that this is going to be one that I was talking about. It's the borrowing capacity. It's the how do I buy more property, Jane? I want to know. I mean,
So if you're going to talk to that as a conflict, tell me what your problem is.
Well, I suppose my problem is I sort of know, like, there's equity there, but it's accessing that equity. So, and the conflict is, do I sell down a property or two or do I just earn more income? Like, and then there's all these other sort of things clashing against that. The priorities, it's to earn more income. I probably need to work a little bit harder. Or if I'm selling those properties, I'm letting go of that thing that I built for myself. So does that give you enough context, Jane?
Yeah. So just as a separate conversation here, that I would have with you if I was coaching with you, is that the borrowing capacity is something that is a leverage for you to be able to achieve something. What is it that you're aiming to achieve?
So to me, it's the ability to do what I want and go where I want with who I want. Really, it's that classic cliched financial freedom for me.
And do you know what that number is for you?
Yep.
Okay.
I mean, I don't need this number, but it's 300K.
Okay, so 300K a year would give you everything that you want.
Yeah, I mean,
okay.
I could easily do it on 150.
Just as a heads up, when I do vision sessions with clients and go, okay, let's work out the number, we'll step into a day, week, month, and year of your dream life, and we then cost it out. Everyone thinks it's $150,000 to $200,000, and like, spoiler alert, out of the hundreds of these I've done, it's somewhere between 60 and 80,000 once your home's paid off.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Travel and everything, right? So just so we know that, so borrowing capacity is creating a lot of stress in your life because you can't have this freedom. But the number that you probably defined is a number that you probably don't need. You're probably creating the stress. So as long as you just acknowledge that to start with, we could probably just finish now. But are we good with that? I'll just put that there.
We're good. I know that. Actually, I track my expenses on a monthly basis, so I know what we spend. And you're right. Without the mortgage, we could do it on 50. But do I want to do it? Yeah.
Okay, that's okay. So as long as we'll park that, because that's not part of this conversation. So we're back with this intention that we're going to dig out your underlying belief, which is possibly something that's holding you back in other areas. It's not going to fix this situation. At the end of this situation, this example, we're not going to have fixed your borrowing capacity, right? That's what we do in the group with our chats. So, so tell me, what do you think about this situation? The problem that you have is that you've got equity available, you can't access it. There's two leverage points you can think of: earn more or sell and create some cash that you can do something with. So tell me, what do you think? What are your thoughts as soon as you start thinking about this problem?
Well, for me, it seems like a very solvable problem. I mean, it's not a challenging one. I mean, earning more is you just create. I mean, we run on property, so it's creating a business. If you're working for somebody else, you go, yeah. So that's what I think. And the selling the property, that's probably I have sold property in the past, but I don't know. To me, I just feel like I'm early mid-30s now. So I'm like, do I want to keep selling these properties to keep moving forward? Like, what's the purpose of selling? Why don't I just, so those are the kind of, and that's where I'm sort of conflicted. It's like, there's two quite simple solutions, but I don't know, does that give you?
I'm failing to see the actual problem. Sorry to jump in, but
the problem is
I can't access it. But why do you need to access it? That's just, my brain's just jumping in there. Sorry, because I'm just trying to. If you were to write it as a problem statement, what is it?
We've got defined his problem as he can't access equity, and accessing equity allows him to buy more to get to his $300,000. And what you're thinking about that is that, gosh, I'm in my mid-30s. Should I still be selling? I've sold before. It should be simpler than this. There should be an answer. You know, in your mind, there's a solution, right? And you just can't get it. That's what I'm getting. Yeah.
I think for me, it's a patient. And to Jen's point, like, you actually make a fantastic point. It's like, there's not really a problem. There isn't. I've created this and it's because I want it quicker. It's like, and maybe it's, I sort of have set these arbitrary goals in my head. I want them, and not to make this too much about me, but it's sort of taking through this process. I suppose it is, yeah.
You're in the circle, Jeff.
You're in the circle. We're with you, and we're all in with you.
Okay,
so you've set this goal. So the thing that I'm just pulling out the most there is, I'm in my mid-30s. Like, I should have it by now. Like, I've been stopped. Something stopped me. Okay. So tell me, what do you feel about this? You got this conflict. You've got this equity that is available. You want to keep growing your portfolio to get to your magic number, to have a life of freedom. You can't do it. You're thinking it should be easier than this. I'm in my mid-30s. I should have cracked it. What feelings come up?
I suppose it's failure. Like what's going on? What's going on? Like I'm not. Like we've created and been sort of investing for close to 10 years now, and it's I should be further. And I think to give a bit more context and give you maybe a bit more, like, growing up, I'm an only child, so I've sort of been told that I can achieve and do all these things, and was quite successful at school and university, and then things just came fairly naturally to me. And so this thing isn't quite, like, I'm not clicking my fingers and it's not happening, which, I don't know if that helps you more.
So,
like inadequacy?
The only feeling I got there was failure. And if we're really specific, like, can you go deeper in failure? Failure is like a top emotion. Give me what that really feels like for you, that you can't keep going. You've got this arbitrary barrier that stopped you. How does that make you feel?
I have to reflect, and I hadn't thought about this yet, so I usually have the answer. I suppose to me it's like I'm not, perhaps not enough. Like I don't know if that I'd have to probably go and meditate and think about it to get to that answer.
Okay, we're going to be through it in like 10 minutes. You won't have to just tell me what the feeling. So you've talked about a belief of not being enough, but this failure, or arguably one of the first failures you've experienced, how does that really, on a real kind of deep level, how does that make you feel? You're a father of children, you're creating this life, you're an ambassador for property investors, you're a leader and influencer in the field. How does it feel that you've been stopped?
I actually feel a little bit sick, I suppose. Like I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Like the more I think about it, just kind of, I start to feel like I don't know. Yeah,
it's oppressive, right? It's an oppressive kind of weight. I feel like there's a real weight to you. This is really pulling you down. This is kind of like a shock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not used to feeling this. So I'm very much I've got that goal, and I'm striving towards it. But it's interesting that I think you've hit on something there potentially, Jane.
So there's a bit of shock. There's a bit of all of these things. And as I said, thoughts and feelings aren't real because they go back to your old stories. And if your story has always been about success and this is something strange and different, there's a reason, there's a conflict, there's a tension there. And the tension is where the creativity and the experience is, because once you're in a state of tension, you're like, okay, when I see a tension or a thought or feeling come up, it means that I'm possibly going to a deep-rooted belief that is buried so deeply that I don't know what it is. But if I can expose that and name it and call it out, I take the power out of it. So that's why we're going through this process. So we've got this situation, we've got a conflict, you're frustrated because you've got this equity. The rule makers are telling you can't have it. You've always had success. You're feeling like a failure. You're feeling, a bit shocked and sick, and, this is weighing you down. You can't get to the number. You're on the steps to success. You're 30. You've been doing it for 10 years. You had it by now. You had all these success criteria. What does that say? Well, how do you define yourself? Having heard all of that, how do you define yourself?
Are we looking for a word or a feeling?
Yeah. So I feel like that means that I am a failure. That means I can't have it all. That means that there's always someone going to stop me. Like, if I say, how does that define you in the context of the world and how you turn up?
Yeah, I think for me it defines me as imperfect. I suppose. I mean that's kind of yeah. And I've had going back. Like I've been thinking about this over the last sort of couple of minutes, and for me growing up, it was having that air of being sort of switched on and just turning up all the time, and yeah. And I suppose not yeah. And I kind of know that I'm getting there, but it's just not quick enough. So yeah, I think I need to be kinder to myself perhaps, because it is happening. But yeah,
You don't have to solve
yeah.
it yet. So
No, that's right.
if you're imperfect, how are other people? When you look at others, how do you define others? If you're imperfect and you're in this world and there's all these other people out there watching you, how does that work? How do you define others?
It actually makes me it makes me feel. I suppose I feel a little bit, because I feel bad that I'm actually in the situation that I am, which is a great position. So I almost feel like there's other people out there that have much bigger challenges than me, and in a different at a more starting. I'm like, well, why aren't I just sort of satisfied with where I am, rather than it's like seeing like yeah. So comparing to people is not actually helping. It's kind of, and it's not helping because it's not. I sort of like to compare to people ahead of me, because that actually motivates me. Whereas so and that's what I suppose I want.
So if I summarize that, you're saying if you feel imperfect, there's also an embarrassment and a kind of shame associated in the fact that you're like, but other people actually have bigger challenges than me. Then what do I have? What do I have to be complaining about? Like, seriously, first world problems is what I'm getting. Is that, yeah?
Yeah.
So other people have bigger problems. I should kind of like suck it up, sweetie.
And that's probably the conflict, because it's like, okay, there's this part that's pulling me to go further, but then it's like, well, no, why do I need to go further? I don't know.
Okay. So if you said that, you're imperfect and there's some degree of being very uncomfortable on even naming this as a problem, but, which is like you're uncomfortable in actually showing that you're human because you've got a problem, because it's always been success. And other people have got bigger problems. And, if you said then, well, I define the world. How do you see the world? Is the world something that punishes those that aren't perfect? Is a world that is something that is challenging? You see the world as, there's a number of obstacles that are always put in the path. There's always another thing. Like that would be an example of how you see the world. So if you kind of like close your eyes, just sit in this feeling that you've got that, you've got this problem that you can't access the cash, you've been stopped by this kind of invisible barrier, you're feeling like a failure, there's a bit of shock around it, you're feeling imperfect, but then you also feel embarrassed that, others go through a tougher time. How's the world reward people? How's the world actually choose the winners? Like how does this turn up for you?
For me, it rewards effort. That's the way I kind of I always hear when people say, "Oh, I was just lucky." I'm like, well, I don't know. I don't think you were lucky. I think you just worked. Luck may play a small part of it, but yeah, to me, I don't think I see the world as I'm a bit of a Pollyanna to some extent. To me, I see that the world there's so much good out there, and I choose to see a lot of that, and then it's just my internal like. I'm probably I'm the hardest on myself, whereas I think
absolutely. If you said that the world rewards effort, what do they punish?
Laziness.
What's the world punish? Yeah, more than that. Give me more than that.
What do they punish? Lack of effort.
Those that give up.
Yeah, that's exactly. Yeah, those who give up, because to me, if you're not, the only time that you're not going to be successful is if you stop trying.
Yeah, right. So if the world punishes those that give up, and you've got this artificial barrier that's stopping you to get to where you want, you're going to be punished. Like your subconscious is sitting there going, I'm about to be punished because I can't push through this. I can't, the effort, the exhaustion, the overwhelm, oh my God, I'm so frustrated. Like, I got to keep going, but I'm being stopped. And underlying that is this little belief that you got going on was the world's going to punish those that give up. So bloody well going to keep going at this. And you've never had to really struggle like that before. So it's unusual and uncomfortable. So what's the underlying assumption under all of that where we've like, there's success is so important and we don't want you to fail. And you're on this path of failing against this big goal that you have. And if you fail, there's a punishment. What is that underlying assumption that you might have?
That if you stop something, you fail.
Yeah, kind of.
That I'm not enough.
Yeah, it could be a bit of I'm not enough. I'm thinking it's I don't have capacity. Like this is kind of there's a feeling there of I've tried everything.
Like avoidance, too hard basket avoidance to me. That's
procrastination. Yeah, perhaps. Yeah.
Well, if you think about the fact that you've tried everything and you've been stopped, and there is like it's always been easy for you. Yep. And potentially there's a little bit of, you know, what Jen and I had spoken about before, the imposter
growth
syndrome.
Mindset, mindset.
Yeah, you're kind of in this challenging situation. Then you've tried everything. Then you don't have capacity. You don't have within you to work this out. Like you just don't have the capacity for it, which leads kind of into I'm not enough. I'm not enough. I don't have it. I don't know what to do. Like there's this kind of like,
I can't.
Does that sit with you okay?
Yeah, it does. I mean, scarily does. And I've attempted, I have failed things before. And those two things have been, I've had a career coaching sort of business that I didn't sort of run. And there was a financial blog that I ran. And I was just like, you know, this is just, I don't know. I gave it up. And that was pretty foreign for me to do those things. And it felt, but it was okay. I didn't. The world didn't cave in on me.
No one died.
Everything was okay. The sun still came out the next day.
So if you've got this underlying kind of assumption, not enough, no capacity, what do you do to deal with that? When this comes up for you, do you stop the blog, stop the career coaching, stop? Like, is that the typical kind of action that you do?
Yeah, I suppose it's a motivation loop. There's sort of what'll happen is it'll come in bursts, and I'm like, you know, and I've sort of been finding recently with a lot of this stuff, I've been not stopping as much. So I don't know what's driving that, and I think what it is actually talking about it more and asking people for help, and saying, hey, look, I'm struggling. I need a bit more help here, and actually being comfortable with asking for that help. I know we're not supposed to go to solution mode. Sorry, but
that's perfect, because what you see in this conflict, right, and in your past experiences, is that there is a bit of shame and embarrassment. Like you should have this nailed, right? And let's just say it's unrealistic in some people's minds who are listening to this, going mid-30s and you're doing okay, buddy. Like it's all right. But yeah, we put all that aside because there is this kind of judgment of going, how can I complain when there's other people going so badly? Like, you know, and if you've had some experience in having what we're going to call failures in, you know, achieving things, because we know that what you've done so far is successful here. But if you've given up in the past, then you do have this kind of like, not this time. The world is really going to punish me. Like there is punishment for people who don't put in the effort. I'm going to put in the effort. And if that means that in front of hundreds of people, I'm going to vulnerably share this and ask for advice or see something that I haven't seen before, then I'm going to do it. I'm going to ask experts about, you know, what do they do? What is the way around this? And, you know, this just gives you the opportunity to go, well, if I don't feel I have the capacity, and in the past when I've hit this stumbling block and I've given up, and the end result is I've given up on my dreams, my hopes, my chances, and I decide I have this choice, to Jen's point, I now have a choice where I go, when those thoughts that come up that say there's you know, there's no other way, I've tried it all. And when I'm feeling that I'm a failure, that's just me going back into my old beliefs of, you know, I don't have the capacity enough. I actually now choose to ask for help or look externally. And going to the neuroscience, if we can get into our parasympathetic, which is our, you know, rest and digest, and our way that our body actually allows us to have, you know, our eyes dilated and our lungs, you know, open, and our brain open to new opportunities and connection, all of that, then you can actually go, okay, there is something I can do. In actual fact, when I've hit my borrowing capacity, maybe the number is too much, or maybe just looking at the properties that I have and going, I don't have to hold on to these. It's not a failure to sell them, which is essentially what you said in the beginning. I've sold them before, but, you know, I've built these. I'm in my 30s. I shouldn't have to sell. Well, if there's a better opportunity, there could be. Or you don't buy the property. You do something innovative. You know, you do something that's unusual. You have people who've listened to this and going, well, actual fact, I want him on my side to help me find a property, find a deal, put it together. And what are the things that you have that other people don't have that you can bring to the party? So this exercise, as brief as it is, you know, the opportunities that it gives us is just to expose the golden snitch that's below, which is, you know, I believe that the world is going to punish me if I fail. I see myself on this path of failure. I'm kind of embarrassed to call it that because other people are doing it so tough. But normally, or in, you know, I've had a really blessed life. I've had a lot of opportunities. I've taken them. When I failed, I kind of bowed out quietly and no one's really seen it. This is very public. I'm doing things differently now because I want to not fail and give up. I'm going to do things that are going to allow me to have that financial freedom that I want. Maybe the number's too big. I don't have to sell short on my goals, but maybe I can do things and attract things that aren't the typical increase your income or reduce your costs or sell a property. So this now gives you that kind of opportunity to step into what else can I do?
Yeah. I mean, I'm excited to actually, I mean, I get excited seeing people get sort of hit the stuff that I'm sort of struggling with. So it inspires and motivates me. So I suppose the thing that has kept me going is seeing the Oz property community. I know that sounds a bit crass and a bit sort of cliched, but it's seeing people who I thought, oh, you know, I think they could be in a bit of trouble there, and then just sort of checking in or just seeing a post or whatever. I'm like, wow, there you go. That sort of social proof has been very powerful for me.
And I think the other thing, I mean, I was lucky enough for Scotty to go, there's these two lads and they've got 500 people in the group. Let's go give them some love. You know, way back when you've got a group of over 76,000 people. You know, you're creating an environment that allows people to have these conversations, to go, you know what, it's not quite working for me. And that's okay, because as investors, we know that sometimes we're in the middle of stuff. Sometimes it's our own creation. You know, we've got in the way of ourselves. And, you know, maybe we are in the place where we think we don't have the power, the capacity. I'm not enough. I'm not worthy. I'm not safe. Whatever that is, that belief that comes up, it's something that doesn't just affect this situation, it affects all of your life. Like, it's probably happening and playing out somewhere else as well. So just when you're just use this as a signpost, and for people who can do this themselves, those thoughts, those feelings, they come up and you go, where are they coming from? Like, what is this? And that's the key for you to go, I now get a choice to say, how am I going to turn up? Am I really going to be punished by the world if I fail? You know, and let's you know, look at asking for help and seeing different ways of doing things.
Thanks Shane. I mean, and thanks for the Ozprop group for watching along. I did not expect. I thought this would just be a quick 5 or 10 minute sort of surface level. So yeah, there you go. So
not on my watch.
No, thank you, and thanks Jen for coming along for the journey. So where we want to go from here, because we do have the tool that people can sort of start to ask some of these questions as well, because it's not, and when we spoke, and I want to hear some of Jen's tools. So before we do that, we are going to throw to today's sponsor, and then we come back, we're going to unpack some of Jen's tools, and then we're going to talk to the really cool thing that you've developed, the innovative thing, the property chat AI. So let's get into that. So stay tuned, everybody, and bring your questions as well, because you've seen what Jane just done with me. So we can't promise to do a 10 or 15 minute session, but we can help to unpack those briefly. So we'll be back very soon.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have a special announcement from the Master of Commercial Property Investing, Steve Polisi.
I love commercial property.
Get ready to have your minds blown as Steve is back, and he's got some pretty exciting news for us. Steve is unleashing his second sensational book upon the world, and get this, for the Oz Property Investors members out there, he's giving it away absolutely free. Yep, 100% free. Yep. 100% free for all property enthusiasts who want to learn and grow on their commercial property investing journey. But he's also added a little extra chili to make this deal even spicier. As he can only do so many sessions. So if you want to secure your spot, do so today. Oh, nearly passed out there.
Thanks,
There's
Steve.
a lot going on in that. Hey, Steve, please make something that's ADHD friendly, Steve. It feels like I'm in a pinball machine, which I spend most of my life trying to avoid.
It's not
it is.
Steve for that.
I don't think Steve does anything that's not sort of what's the word? Bombastic,
Energetic.
Like so. On to
Zen
this.
master himself.
Yeah. So if you've gotten value, drop a like, do all the good stuff, people. But I want to know, Jen, you've teased
Drop
us
a
a little bit
nugget.
earlier.
Give us a hashtag nugget, because Jen's about to drop some great tools here.
What's the nugget?
There's a few, but it's normally, unlike Jane, because these are things I've learnt myself along the way. It doesn't have a lot of structure. It normally is prompted when someone gives a scenario and I'm like, oh, I would do it, this way. So there is a handful, but always available online too. So like pop questions up in the group and things like that, like down the track, because sometimes it is the scenario. But just quickly, and backing Jane for starters, if you're stuck, feel the emotion, acknowledge it. It's a matter of taking, and Jane said all the neuroscience stuff. I'm just going to say it works. That's all I know. So stopping and acknowledging that emotion is one of the first steps. And if you find, and like people can say, pretend they don't know what I'm talking about, but if they actually think through this, they will, or they'll be, tomorrow or next week, they'll be in a moment. They go, I just did that. So the stories we tell ourselves are one of the biggest derailers. The neuroscience, it's generally stems from previous experiences. But if we can stop that, so I'm currently working on a feedback loop, and I like to find balances. So there's generally something that keeps that negative feedback loop going. It feeds it around and around. And so like your autonomic, which is your feelings and your physical sensations. So it's a matter of acknowledging those like in the moment. And then you've got your cognitive, which is your thoughts, your mental images, your stories, things like that, which generally then leads to the behaviors. So the things we do, whether it be procrastination, whether it be avoidance, or whether it be, not making any decision, whatever it is, normally that go-to behavior. So it starts with the emotion, then it goes to the stories. it's about where to find, and I don't have the answer because I find my own in different situations, but it's about finding a spot to break that cycle, because it will feed itself. It will, the neuron patterns are in your brain, and until you disrupt them and put a balance in that negative feedback loop, you'll repeat it. So acknowledging it is the first thing, but there's so much, Jane's got some great tools, so much available online. So that's probably my first tip. The other part of it too, and I guess I don't have much, so I'll just focus on kind of what Jeff said. So I got an idea. I just thought of this before when Jeff was on there, because ADHD brain, I'm kind of here, but I'm also elsewhere. So I've got something. So I'll get Jeff and Jane, but also everyone in the audience. So even if you're at the, supermarket, or in the shower, whatever you're doing, listening to this, I want everyone to stop for a moment, and I want you to
Keep
smile.
driving, please don't stop.
No, not stop physically. I want you to, I want everyone to smile. Just, do you feel a little more uplifted than what you did before you smiled?
I do. I feel pretty uplifted. So it's hard to overcome that uplift, but yeah, I do feel a little bit, yeah.
But that's what I'm saying. So sometimes when stuff's hard, or everything just feels like it's going wrong, and I can feel myself spiraling because I stopped, because I acknowledged. And one of the tools I use is simply just smiling, because you can do it anywhere, anytime. You're breathing as well, obviously, deep breaths in, breaths out, those sorts of things. But they seem nufty, they seem woo-woo. And I've been talking about, I think the last live I spoke that I did a couple of years ago with Jeff and Joe, I spoke about this, and it's so good to have Jane's backing on this, because Jane's so well respected in the industry. It's like, see, I've been saying this. It feels like it has a little bit more weight. But yeah, I think the fact that we are more drawn, and we're more likely to put in that little backlog the negative experiences. Negative emotions stick with us more than what positive ones do. They're more permanent. That's why they form the story. And I don't even know if this is right. A lot of this is my own experience through, years of life, and a lot of adversity. So I think it sticks a lot. And if you can recognize the emotion, stop, recognize the story that comes in, like, why am I saying that? Oh, this always happens. Why does this shit always happen to me? Or, the whatever it might be, the tenant, what I was saying before, you think you did well picking a tenant, and then you don't. God, I'm no good at this. Or, and then the feelings, I can't trust myself. Like, there's so many things that come up, but there's no positives. So I find things that actually replace the stories. So my go-to that I've tried to map to teach myself is when I feel everything always goes wrong, right? And I go, Jen, catch yourself, stop.
Yep, perfect.
What's your go-to? So I actually have them written down. So I've recognized the stories by stopping, by acknowledging, and I've written them down, and I've written replacements next to them that I force myself to say in those moments. Sounds crazy, but I've got myself through.
You're just replacing the story.
Yeah, replacing the story. But you need to have a replacement, because you need to connect it. So when your brain feels the emotion, what you want is to go straight to that better story that you're
so much unpack, isn't it, Jane? I can see your.
I love what Jen's saying, because every morning every 6 months with my coach, I come up with an orientation of things I want to create. And every morning I have 10 things before I get out of bed that orientates me around what I want to create. The first is I choose the end result of living my true nature and purpose. And I step into the Goggin circle, and I feel the emotion of that. I feel the emotion of learning and sharing and inspiring people, and what that does to uplift, my community, my family, my friends, the humanity, right? And so if what Jen's saying is, she's saying, have something to replace it with, even more valuable, have that vision. None of this kind of secret shit where if you think it's going to turn up, you're going to have the vision and put emotion to it. How's that make you feel? So how does it make you feel, Jeff, having $300,000 a year and living the home and having all of the ding-dangs? Unless you put your family in there and your friends in there and your contribution, you won't have that emotional tug. So when you get to a point of adversity and when you need resilience, you're actually drawing on that resilience resume of going, what is it that I really want? This is what I want. And you put emotion to it. The brain actually will go to the mental models that have the emotions first. It doesn't have a timeline. Time doesn't exist in the brain. And it doesn't know that what you're experiencing hasn't already happened. So the neuroscience behind what Jen's saying is like, yeah, like what we'll have what she's having. Absolutely. Come up with a different story, put emotion with it. And you're already there in short-circuiting the negative talk.
No,
that's what I used. Oh, sorry.
No, I'd like to really, and you hear people talk about there's the carrot and the stick approach, and like carrot is the reward versus the stick, which is the punishment. And although we did speak a little bit about punishment there, for me, I think I'm more focused and interested in the reward. Because when you started talking about thinking about, well, yes, think about your family, think about your friends and having them around, it just makes me, I'm just super motivated. And that's, you're very right, Jen, even though you sort of are downplaying your, I think lived experience is just as powerful. So I don't think you should downplay that, just even though Jane's done a lot of this, the study and had a lot of the mentors sort of help her and been a mentor herself. I think, I want to sort of acknowledge just briefly you, Jen, because you really are quite switched on and attuned to a lot of these things. So
lived experience.
I've had to be. I've had no choice. I wouldn't be here.
It's interesting. One of the simple things that people can do is ask like the 5 whys. So for instance, I had someone ring up recently and said, I knew that I was going to have you as a mentor when I got to my 7th investment property. And I was like, 7 properties, what's your number? Didn't know the number. So we just parked that and did a vision session of what the number was. And I said, why? And he's like, well, it gives me safety and security. I was like, maybe he hasn't had safety and security. Let's park that. And I say, but why do you need that? So my family is safe. Okay, so let's park that. So why? The 5th why, I'm bored at work. So you're going to spend $1 million because you're bored at work? Like, what makes you get up in the morning, makes you excited? Well, I have this side hustle. It doesn't bring in a lot of money, but I'm helping keep kids off the street. Makes my heart glow. He's shone. I'm like, how about we work on that? Yes, we can get your 7th property. I can do a deal review for you. You can look at what buyers agents are referring to you and yada, yada, yada. But this is more exciting. This is your purpose. How about we work on that? So just ask yourself the whys. It's like, why do I think I have to have the next property? Why do I think I have to have the red sports car? Like, if you're self-referential,
5 times, guys, just so you don't miss it. 5 times, just in case.
When you're self-referential, you don't give a shit what other people think. You're like, I'm okay. If you just do this 30-second exercise, it's like we all have money stories, right? But this 30-second exercise, you close your eyes, you wake up tomorrow, everyone's gone. Your friends, your family, the world. There's enough power, food to keep you going. You go through the grief, everyone's dead. Are you going to live in the mansion? Or are you going to live in a nice little home where you can have your own little veggies and wander around through the forest? You're going to need the Gucci shoes and the handbag, or you're going to be, wearing your boots. Like, if everything's gone tomorrow and what other people's opinions of you doesn't matter, what do you really want? Have a think about that.
Yeah. On that note, Dave Oliver, and I think you responded a couple. He's saying, what if you just love money itself? Does anybody really?
I don't believe you.
It's kind of like the Scrooge McDuck when he goes into the vault and just like swims in it. It's
and
what money.
Scrooge McDuck isn't happy.
Arbitrary. Money is like, and it's made up. The paper value, like it's made up. It's not even against anything. Like it's a made up illusion.
Let's put a 5 whys to that. What if you just love the money? Why do you love the money? Like whoever, I don't know who put that comment up, but that's what I would. I mean, I'm not saying there's a right or wrong, but if someone's put it up in the comments, they've put it up there for a reason. Otherwise, they wouldn't have. So if you're asking the question, I would drill down because, and Jane's got experience in this, I don't, but I'm going to say that 99.99% of the time, it ain't about the money. But that's what that surface level part is. And look, I'm not saying this for the post that just put it up at all. I'm not saying this, but my thoughts are a lot of the time. No, I'm not. I don't know who it is either. Not that it matters.
Don't hate me.
Oh, sorry, Dave. Sorry, Dave.
Call it out. You're right. Call it out, Jen.
But more often than not, it's for comparison purposes. So I'm not a fan of money because I don't compete with anyone. We all have, I mean, one of my favorite sayings is, you know, our plates are all made of different things. And this probably sort of goes back to what Jeff's saying, you know, like other people are going through so much hard stuff. Everyone's plates, some are made of paper, some are made of steel. And that is just how we are. There's no you're better or worse or anything else. Everybody's different, okay? And so everyone has different tools, everyone has different brains, everyone has different families, different upbringings. It's all so different. And I think if I chose to compare, being, you know, I'm 42, you know, being that I've had a, you know, reasonable upbringing, all those things, I should be retired. But I'm not. So that doesn't, even saying that makes me feel like, ugh, you know, which is why I don't say those things. I shouldn't be anything. And I just think that's important to point out that I would be putting a 5 whys against that, which is an analysis tool. And just it's a root cause analysis.
Yeah, exactly. But we are born with twice the neuroconnections in our brain than we have now as babies. And for the first 7 years, we prune and tune. We look to the environment. We look to our parents. We look to the guardians. We look to the stories that they're telling us. And I've got this course, Renovate Yourself, Renovate Your Wealth. And I had this lady on it. And, you know, she came from a life of adversity. She'd made a lot of money, bought this beautiful home, and went into a deep depression. And she came to the course, and we were talking about in the first 7 years, you know, 76% of your neuroconnections are made in the first 7 years, 90% by the time you're 10. And so you're actually acting most of the time as a toddler. You're going to like, how do you got validated, loved, you know, belonging, safe as a toddler is actually dictating your actions now. And we were talking about, you know, what were your parents saying? Like, what was your experience? And she said, oh, my God, we used to drive around these rich suburbs every Sunday on our Sunday after lunch drive. And Dad used to go, they're evil if they've made money. And Mum used to say, if they're rich, they did something wrong. They're not nice people. And she said, and I became rich and I hated myself and I never saw it. I didn't know why I went to depression. So, you know, we do have this kind of experience of when we say the whys, we do the root cause analysis, or we get to the belief, and when we get to, well, where did that come from? I mean, often it comes from that time in our life where we didn't have the cognitive abilities to make this assessment. But when we actually look at what we want to manifest and what we want to create, and we go for what our heart is, and we bring in emotion, we bring in the contribution and how it makes others feel as well, that's where the power is where we get the chance to, you know, call out the fraud in the property investing industry, which is ourselves. We hold ourselves back. I mean, people are doing the most amazing things with nothing, no money down, you know. So
I had that session last week, no money down development deals, which, I mean, yeah, I'd done one of those as well, but I'd sort of talk about it. But I want to, like, this has been great.
I want to get to... I still haven't put any money into it. Yeah, not a cent.
I want to get to property.
Might be $900,000 in already, but...
Yeah, it'll happen. So I wanted. There is a tool that I teased from Jane, which she put a test post. So if you want to share your screen, Jane, because I think this could be very, very interesting and just a really game-changing tool for people. So we're going to do a live demonstration. So.
Okay, so like, you know, hold your horses, because if it doesn't work, well, it's live, right? So who knows? Okay, so here's the story. Basically, as you know, and it's got two screens here while I'm looking off. So as you know, I've been educating people. Gosh, I think I ran my first course for the Reno Kings back in 2007, and I was doing community college courses in Balmain and way before then. So I always wanted to teach people what I learnt and, you know, inspire them for property investing. And so it's got to the point where, you know, my third chapter of my life now is really to help people, empower them and find out what holds them back and help them with their business or their marketing or their investing or you know, their personal development. And so I've got 20 years of all this property education and all these courses and, you know, the Ultimate Guide to Renovation itself, $3,000 course, got 60 modules in it. And, you know, the Your Property Success podcast and 250 hours of webinars. And for the last 10 years, I run and still run a monthly Q&A in Your Property Success Facebook group. So I've got 10 years of monthly Q&As. And I was like, what am I going to do with all this? So last year, 2022, I started playing with AI, and then OpenAI came out, and I worked with a couple of Silicon Valley experts and trying to develop a tool. I didn't want to give all my content away to ChatGPT and make it public. You know, I wanted to be able to monetize in some respects, but democratize education so that people didn't have to pay for it. If they wanted to, you know, take up an offer from one of my aligned trusted partners that I've worked with for many years, then great. And I make 40, 50, 60 bucks, whatever it is. But, you know, I wanted to be able to leave a legacy. And I've spoken to most of the property experts in Australia who are at that same stage, and they're like, hell yeah, we'll give all the content as well. So propertychat.ai has finally come about. Anyone who actually wants to learn how to do this, DM me, because I'm putting together a webinar on the 19th of September to teach people how, if maybe a property a AI clone is for them. And what I did was, I'm going to try to share my screen here. So share screen, entire screen. I created propertychat.ai. So it's only like early release and it's all very new, but essentially it's my clone. So you can ask me anything. And so at the beginning of this week, we kind of like were playing around and we jumped into the Oz Property Group and said, hey, you know, what do I do if I'm limited by borrowing capacity? Because at that stage, we had the conversation about that was the issue that you wanted to bring up. So it was like, so what do I do when I have been stopped by my borrowing capacity? So as you know, we asked this in the group, and some of the answers were from Steve. Thank you to our lovely sponsor, Marry Well. Paul said, set up your side hustle long before it's needed. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
I need my glasses. I was just looking, but I can't find them, so I can't.
So, you know, we had all of these kind of like things that were coming up, right? So let's see if I can make this bigger so us with bad eyes can actually read this.
It's just when you, like what I can do.
Okay. So we've got some of like, you jump into a group, you ask your mum and dad, you know, they say, don't borrow too much. Like my dad said, one day you'll owe $1 million. And I was like, oh, I already owe 3 million. We had Jenny who said, sit down, be grateful. We had Mike who said, have some more spouses, you know, no dependents. Someone said, Fire said, pay a willing broker to fudge your income. And he also said asset lending, where they don't look at income, which is a good idea. Some people had some really great ideas, buying an SMSF, set up extra income, granny flats, and storage, said Paul. Gure said, build other assets to have multiple income streams. So you can see here, I've gone in and I've asked AI Jane, what do I do? Hitting your borrowing capacity can feel like a roadblock, but there's several strategies. Essentially, your borrowing capacity is based on what you earn and owe, increasing, like I agree with her, increasing first, etc. So we have all of this, you know, did you know that your credit card, every $5,000 limit, you can borrow $20,000 less, explore different things. Sometimes your original loan with the lenders, the policies may have changed. You know, if you want to push the envelope, think outside the box, secondary side hustle, take an option on a property for future purchase, even entering, you know, GBs. So we've got all of this kind of information here. But what I also did, and this is like maybe people want to, and you can get in here and like you've got, hey, did you want to speak to a broker? I've got in here, you know, when should I use a conveyancer? No, actually, when should I use a quantity surveyor? So this is not, none of this has like, you know, what's happening in Melton at the moment. This is based on 20 years of, how do you buy well? How do you renovate? All right, diving into the nitty-gritty of property investing using a quantity surveyor is crucial. Now, when you actually type in a question here, what you're going to do is you're going to get my source data. If you ask a question about renovation, you're actually going to get one of those 60 modules from my Ultimate Guide to Renovation course. Don't have to pay. So here, if I jump into here, here's a podcast that I did with Tyron Hyde. Can you see that? I'm thinking the
This
answer
is
there
cool,
is no.
Jane. Sorry, just
Well,
jumping in.
if you go into this is what I love, and you play it, it actually goes to the point in the podcast where I ask him,
Don't think it's quite, doesn't seem to be.
so you don't have to listen to the whole podcast. You can go to just the source information. You can go to my book. So this is the transcript from my book where I talk about quantity surveyor. So you can go through and actually get access to my manual, a whole PDF on, what was in it. You could have anyhow. So, but what I want to try, and this could be the big failure, and this, could be fun. I don't know. Let's just see where we go here. But I do have a video version. So are we up for it?
Yep.
Yeah,
So
let's
this
have a quick look.
Okay, a quick look. So let's see if this works. Tell me if you see this screen. If this works, it might become public. Who knows? So essentially, here it is, propertychat.ai. If anyone's trying to read that, it says home/clone. And so what I have here is a video version where you can speak to me. So here we go. Let's see what happens. Could it work? I don't know.
So if you're watching along or if you're listening to the podcast, jump on YouTube, people, because you'll see if we're able to succeed and watch this whole conversation, I suppose, on YouTube as well, because there is, if you listen to the podcast, it's only as powerful as, here we go. What's going on here? So we can see you, we see Jane.
With that sound?
I think there might be a plug-in challenge.
Hey, I was wondering, how can I improve my borrowing capacity?
I don't think it's speaking to you. Oh yeah, there you go. It is coming up. So you're speaking to us.
Speaking. I just don't think we have the sound coming through our end. Maybe.
Yeah.
Okay. So that tells me that you can't see the sound. Am I hearing that? Is that what you just said? Okay.
Could you,
That's
Jeff?
okay.
Or anyone in the audience? I couldn't.
No.
Okay. So basically, AI Jane there was listening to the conversation. So she listened to my question, and then she went in and she said, let me work out how I can help you. And then she answered the question. So she actually went in and answered the question. Maybe you will see this. I was speaking to someone the other day. Jane got a little sassy the other day, but so tell me if you can see this. So I asked a friend if she would have a look and trial it while we're in a taxi. Can you hear this?
No, I think it's something to do.
Can't hear it, but the fact that it's got
okay.
the wording over it can sort of shows live that it's like you're talking.
So basically, what you can do is you can jump in and you can actually ask questions, and the video is coming, so you can see that it's almost there. This is probably one of the funniest things. This is the friend who I asked the question, so you can just read this, and she has a bit of a surreal moment. And Jane AI gets a little sassy. So she says, I can't believe this. How do you create it? And Jane always listens. So you can see that you can have a lot of fun and actually talking to me. And so, yeah, you don't have to have those 2 a.m. kind of little like, oh, my God, what do I do if my tenant is having problems? I uploaded a photo from a property inspection the other day because it was damp there. And I just said, what's the problem? And it said, you're probably worried about the damp. Did you also notice that the tiles are broken? And then I said, what would be the color scheme that you'd use? And I was like, if a tenant, you want to use antique white or something that's so you can ask me anything, any renovation question, any finance question, any property investing question, strategy question. It's all there. If you type it in, you get access to all the source data. So it's 20 years worth of knowledge there. I think you get like 3 questions, and then I ask you for an email so that I can keep your history there. Then so that you can go back and look at all of your history and build on it on the questions. But yeah, there it is. AI Jane and friends to come. And if you go to that home/clone, it's actually the video. So I'd love some people to beta test it for me. So maybe you can throw some of the questions that you have in the group there, and we can do it. We could do a question off.
Yeah. I'd love to just if anybody has any questions, let's actually answer them, because I do love the AI. I enjoy actually being able to see and yeah. So if anybody has any questions about what we've spoken about, because and it could even be beyond that, because you have collectively here, I don't know, you could probably have, I mean, I've got at least 10 years experience.
Let's go 60. Yeah.
We'll throw in, I've got about 15 approximately. So just to make sure we're not But no, it's been. Jen, did you have any, I suppose, burning questions for Jane while we're waiting for the audience to ask those questions before we sort of finish off? Anything you'd like to? You've got Jane in front of you now. What would you like to ask? And put you on the spot, but I could sort of.
I just want to know how to access this. That's all I want to know.
If you jump on
I want to trial it.
Propertychat.ai. It's all there.
And is it paid, Jane?
But
or can we trial it for free?
It's free. So I've set it up as free. I could charge, but it's too hard getting charging and setting all that stuff up. So the way that I'm monetizing it is if you ask a particular question and that it's relevant for you to potentially speak to a mortgage broker, conveyancer, quantity surveyor, I don't know, renovation person. If you want a Bunnings discount card, ask a renovation question. You'll be offered a Bunnings discount card along with other discounts. It's basically I get a few bucks off those people, and it just allows me to make it all free. Free for now.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I mean, I love to be about talking. If there's any, I'll throw a question there, and then we'll see what's popping in. Love a tester. So I suppose my question is, Jane, because
oh my God, what have you got there? Okay,
housing affordability. I think it's gone to it. I don't know. Did I punch it? I don't know. Looks like it was I clicked on the link from your homepage, but the question that, given that a lot of us have sort of already been invested, for the up and coming generation, that yes, they may have some of these similar mindset challenges, but how does what needs to change for the next generation to be able to still see some of the success that we've had in property? Because there's a lot of challenges. There's the housing affordability, all that sort of stuff. The narrative out there is, how do people still build a sustainable property portfolio, given the types of things that are coming down the pipeline? Do lending standards have to change? Like, incomes need to rise? What's going to happen with that?
You asking me?
Yeah, definitely asking you. Yeah, I'm not. Yeah.
Okay. Look, it's interesting. I mean, I'm into risk assessment, right? And so in 2017, I sat down and thought, what is the biggest risk to me as a mortgage broker and my business? And I thought, okay, so the entire mortgage broking industry, 75% of loans are written by mortgage brokers, but if you've seen the papers in the last week, CBA is still trying to say that mortgage brokers own too much. Working for 20 hours a day apparently is not enough for helping them not having to employ people. But anyhow, we'll put that aside. So I thought, if property investment completely changed and how people buy properties, how could I protect my business? And I sat in the, okay, if I don't need to know and work out how this is going to happen, and I can just assume, what would be the easiest way that you could actually fund a property investment? And I sat back and I thought, okay, so I can get down, I know all the suburbs, I can risk rate a suburb, I can look at population and income, and look at the kind of soft things. When a suburb starts voting green, we know that the property price goes up. I know that if a property is within 100 meters of a school, that the value goes down. But if it's from 100 to 1,500 meters from, a transport hub or a shopping center, it goes up. Like, I know all of this information. I have studied it. I am like, you wouldn't believe how many spreadsheets I have on census data, and I go through it every few years when it comes out because it excites me. So I know all of this. I know I can put a number on a house, a risk rating on a house. Every house in Australia, does it north facing? Is it the typical for the block size? Does it have potential to be, expanded and developed? All that kind of stuff. So I know I can put a number on every single property in Australia. What if I could put a number on people? What's the risk of a person? So I sat back and thought, okay, so what are the indicators of success for someone who's low risk? Well, we know that people in loving relationships typically actually have a better financial stability, are happier, and live longer. They're statistics, they're proven. We know that. We know that people are the sum of the 5 people that they hang out with. We have neuroplasticity in our brains. We spend time around positive people, positive expectations like Jen is, or we spend time around the negative Nancys. We have Pollyanna Jeff, or we have negative Nancy. You choose who you're hanging out with. We can do that by looking at your social media profile, how you comment, the words you use. People are going through social media and they can actually tell you how positive. You get a positivity rating. So I know I can look at how healthy people are by the 5 people they hang out with. What's the likelihood they're going to be sedentary, drunk on a Friday night, having takeaway dinners? Like, I can work that out. That's like a number. And what if I could then put a risk rating on an industry? 50 of the 52 states in America, the number one employment is truck driver. What if we have automated trucks? How risky is that industry? We now know that robots are better anesthetists and radiologists than people. So what if those jobs have a high risk on them? So we can put a risk on people's income potential, their industry they're in, their typical kind of 5 Cs that they've got now: credit, capability, blah, 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 and their health and their mental stability, their likelihood of divorce, the conversations they have. Like, let's just assume, fast forward now, 7 years, we can get this information easily. Let's assume we put a risk rating on a person. Risk rating on a property, risk rating on a person. I say I want to buy the house at 15 Balmain Road, Balmain. Within seconds, there's a combined risk rating. What if you have all of this lender panel that are banks, that are superannuation funds by mum and dad down the street, there are big industry funds, whomever, who say, if your risk rating is between this and this, we're going to offer you this rate on these terms, you can take it or not. And what if we then have a conveyancing that allows that to happen straight away? What if we have a kind of Graze Online where you put in your top bid and the bidding happens straight away? The only thing in that entire process we need a person is a pest and building inspection. Well, what if every property is mandatory, has to have an independent one? So we could actually have a property funded in seconds. We don't need a mortgage broker unless, which is what I'm teaching mortgage brokers at the moment, to have authentic conversations and creating that connection, human connection, by using AI to its advantage, but having that human connection of having your unique voice and what you offer. So how can I then minimize that? And so I take this to your conversation, which is, how do the people of today, create property wealth like the people that were so lucky that did back in the olden days, and the boomers and the X's, etc. They get creative. They potentially fund the 40, 50,000 disposable type of property that goes in mum and dad's backyard and they rent it out, or they live in it, or they buy with friends. You know, they have that kind of fractional investing. Now, I'm an advisor on a number of different prop techs and industry funds that people come and pitch these amazing ideas. I see them 3 to 5 years before they become what is out there in the market. So I'm seeing these incredible opportunities where people can get together and have this type of property, that property purchasing that isn't typical. The only thing that's limited them is the lenders. And you can bet your bottom dollar that the lenders are looking at risk profiling us and using all of our data to do this. So essentially what we're looking at is, how can the people of today do things differently? Things are going to be different. Set your goals, understand what you need, your numbers, understand that you're probably learning at university now for jobs that haven't even been invented yet. Just learn how to learn, be curious, be compassionate, understand how you want to create and what you want to be in the world and what you need to do that. Have your number, know your vision of what you want to do, and then let the 400 billion pieces of information help you connect the dots. When you see these opportunities that say, you know what, I can live in Thailand on $25,000 a year. What if I was a digital nomad and I ran a digital marketing agency or something that could help, you know, old people stop being scammed because they answer every phone call and they, you know, say yes to the guy on the other end. What if I'm the person in the middle? What if I can come up with an idea like that? That's what.
So in other words, the challenge is, James, we're not creative enough. Is that what I'm hearing?
We're not creative. We're limited.
No, definitely
to
not.
I could.
Limited to the box.
Yeah.
Why
Sorry.
Yeah.
I would say though that the income, it has gotten a bit I mean, I suppose there's that side. I mean, I am Pollyanna, but I just think the average person is probably not doing those sort of things. They're thinking, crap, you know, like it's costing me $1 million to buy a house in a regional sort of place, or sort of $700,000-$800,000, and my income is $90,000. That's 10 times my income. I could do it. Yeah, we could go on, but I hear.
And what if you bought, as a first home buyer, the perfect home for your best friend?
Yeah.
And you got the first home buyers grant. You lived in the property for a year, and then you rented it to them because that's where they want to live. Like, you know, there's so many ways around an opportunity. Absolutely. So understand the system and then step outside of it and go, what do I want to do? And why am I limited to, I have to have the 20% deposit? Maybe I don't.
Just on that too, a very big theme that I've noticed, and talking about the 20% deposit and those, everybody wants to know how. Everyone wants to know the strategy. But 9 times out of 10, they've gone through, you know, they'll list several different options. I could do this or I could do that. And when I say, what are you trying to achieve? Oh, I haven't figured that out yet. So what I find is that when I remain focused on, and I break things down, so it doesn't mean that it's the 30-year time goal. But when I stay focused on what I'm actually trying to achieve, that is when I see the multiple ways to achieve it. But because what happens is people put their blinkers on with the strategy, they miss out on so many things, and they just see what other people are doing.
Yeah.
You don't have to do it how other people are doing it. I haven't done anything how anyone else has done it. And, you know, I might not be uber successful or anything like that, but, mate, I'm chugging along through stuff, you know, and I'm still kicking goals in ways that I never thought was possible. And I haven't got anyone coaching me. I told my daughter I was coming on here with Jane and Jeff the other day, and she's like, cool, Mum. Like, that's the support, you know? Like, I
told my 16-year-old son, I said, this is a great group. What these guys have done, they've got tens of thousands of people. He said, bet you no one watches. I'm like, yeah, probably.
Yeah, but that's what I mean.
How are you going to argue with a 16-year-old boy, right?
Exactly. So there's not really much motivation. I am it. I am my own motivator. I have to motivate myself. I have to be creative. I have to do all of those things. And one of the tools that I use, I mean, I mind map a lot because I work through very complex situations, where there's so many moving parts, and in the amount of times that, and I'm sure people can relate to this. Yeah, but if I do that, but I can't do that. Yeah, but what about that? And everyone just says, I'm out. Too hard basket. Okay. So mind mapping, which is a matter of putting in the middle what it is. I want to borrow more money. All right, cool. But just right. Don't think right, because it comes from a different part of the brain. So when you're trying to write the thing, so you could come up with anything. You could come up with your kid. And it's like, well, there's no judgment. You just mind map and you dump everything that comes to mind in that moment on a whiteboard it. And then you can start to pull things apart. So that's how when there's multiple moving parts, like this is just can I just give a quick example, Jeff, of when I worked through today?
Yeah, we're nearly at 2 hour mark, so I'm just mindful
really
of everyone's time. Yeah.
Okay, I'll be really quick. So PPOR comes off interest only in September. I have a development site that I've just only last week had to pull the plans on because council and EPA have changed the laws, not coming to the party, right? I have to pivot. I've got no choice. I need to stop flogging the dead horse. So I need development finance. I don't have the $200,000 cash that I thought I was going to have because of other reasons. So I'm trying to figure out and how much money I need for X project. I need input from, met with a sales agent yesterday. So I need to go right back through and figure out what are the options that I'm looking at and what are the forecast sales figures to fill that in. And then there are so many moving parts. So at the moment, I can't borrow anything. So I can't refinance my PPOR right now. Soon, when I click the development finance over, I can. So this is what mind mapping does. It pulls all of the intricate pieces that are surrounding it out and allows you to actually visualize it. That's all.
This is what you should have been unpacking in the borrowing capacity, Jen. This is your scenario, but that's okay. It's all good.
What Jen's saying is right, but ask the 5 whys of the thing in the middle, which is I've got limited by my borrowing capacity. Well, what is why? Well, because I want to buy something. Why? Because I want to have $300,000. Why? Because I want to be able to do what I want. Which reminds me of this parable of this guy who's sitting on a beach drinking a cocktail, and someone comes along and says, "Mate, it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. How are you doing this?" And he said, "Oh, I'm a fisherman. I've got a boat. It goes out, it gets the fish in the morning, comes back. I can hang out here in the afternoon." It's like, well, if you had 5 boats, you could actually have more money. And the guy's like, "But then what?" And he said, "Well, then you can export. And when you export, you'll have more people wanting your fish. And then you can actually build a warehouse. And when you build the warehouse, you can actually then have even more people when you have more boats and you can have more money." And he said, "And then what?" He said, "And then you can sit on the beach and drink a cocktail every afternoon at 3 o'clock. It's like, but I'm doing it now.
Doing it now.
You know?
Absolutely.
So
and that's why focusing on the actual goal is important. Just focusing on what you actually want, that desired future state, and maintaining that is important, because there's 1,000 different ways to get there, and it's sometimes not what you think it is.
Exactly. Enjoy the ride.
On that note, guys, I must admit I'm exhausted. This has
just
been
like I'm tired.
So Jane, how do
I could keep going to 2 a.m., Jeff. You know I've got the energy.
Yeah. I mean, I could, but So Jane, we love to sort of as Joe says, how do people get more of Jane and Jenny in their lives? So we'll go first to you, Jane. I mean, we sort of unpacked. You've got the chat.
So many things, right? So if you go to Your Success Club.
That's probably the biggest page to go to, and then you'll see all yourpropertysuccess.com.au gets you a bit of the property stuff.
The Your Success Club will get you the mindset, the abundance, the true wealth in all aspects of your life. If you join my Facebook group, you get the first module of the Renovate Yourself, Renovate Your Wealth for free. So that's Your Success Club today. If you just go to janeslacksmith.com.au, on that page, I pretty much have everything. The mortgages, investors' choice mortgages, the property chat, all of those webinars that I used to run, Can You Make Money in the 40s and 50s, that I was so proud of, that were part of the Sequence Ultimate Guide to Renovation, all the courses that I did. I've actually just put them in a vault so people can watch all of that. It's all timeless education. You can donate to Kids Helpline and get into my Your Property Success Club. Help me get to $30,000. We're at $27,000 at the moment. So janeslacksmith.com.au's pretty much got everything. Your Success Club, Your Property Success. Come hang out. Love to help. Oh, and go to propertychat.ai. Go to the video one and let me know how it goes. But ask your questions.
Yeah, no, that's.
I'll answer you. You don't need to talk to me ever again. You can just ask me questions. I'm actually sending my family there when they ask me questions now. Should I actually fix my rates now? Like, go and ask Property Jane.
I like real conversation, but yeah, no, it is a great tool and a great innovation. But no, you are a pioneer of the industry, Jane, and I say that you're too young to be a pioneer, but you. Have absolutely contributed.
This year, Jeff. It's just the oil of your land. And I
don't
have filters on, obviously, but
but no, it's great.
Yeah, unfortunately, Jeff doesn't have them on this setup.
Good sort of. So, and Jen, if people, I mean, I'm sure people do reach out after you comment in the group, but not that we heavily encourage that. We don't heavily encourage that. But how can people get in touch with you, Jen? Is it just like what's the best play?
I would love for people to pop some questions up in OzProp. I'm happy to be tagged in them. I've still got a stack of tools here that I haven't even shared. So post them in the group. Don't be afraid to tag me or ask anything. And yeah, I'm happy to help with some tools that may be specific for that situation. And I'm sure there's heaps of other people that are. So ask the questions. Messaging, like you might get a response. I barely respond to my family for about 2 weeks half the time, so good luck.
Yeah,
but yeah, pop in OzProp, the best place.
I love it. Thanks, everybody. This has been an amazing, the best fraud issue, our biggest fraud issue. No, this has been a fantastic session. We've been vulnerable. We've discovered AI. We've discovered lots of tools and lots of overcoming challenges. So thanks for tuning in, everybody. As Joe says, let's go and buy a property, or let's go and unbecome the biggest fraud.
Yay.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. Thank you, Jeff.